นักศิษย์ Professor Sakarin Professor Nishimura Dr. Okaki Dr. Keller Director General Tawarat who is joining us soon and Dr. Stephen Roy from the French Embassy. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me commend the organizers of these 3-in-1 events, which sounds like the coffee. I think what Dr. Sirinthornthep is looking for is a coffee break. So I'll try to be as brief as possible so that we will fulfill the 3-in-1. But it also reminds me that when you talk about 3-in-1, I would rather coin it differently and call it nexus. And by nexus, I would want to integrate the 3 items that are at our hearts and minds for the conference in this coming few days. The first part of the nexus would be energy, for sure. The second part is the climate change. And the third part is the role of science, technology, and innovation toward these 2 very important aspects of humankind. And when you look at nexus, you must be wondering, why on earth do we have these 3 elements unconnected? As a result of energy consumption of our planet Earth, mostly created by man-made, is a result of why we have to have COP21, COP22 today, isn't it? So one must not escape from the responsibility that we ourselves are creating the reason of the existence of nexus, however disconnected they are. And today, it probably be a good time to integrate or to reconnect these 3 elements of nexus together, because we need to not only developing, but also to correct what we have done in the past several decades. And as we know, when we talk about energy development, it's something that every country has to look seriously in trying to come up with sufficient energy supplies so that it can be propelling the economic growth. Every government is always worried about economic growth because when time comes of election, when time comes of voting, people are looking at their pockets to see how much money they have left. Economic growth. And for economic growth to happen, you need energy. In the past, we have not worried too much about the consequence of the energy supplies and energy utilization that we use in our everyday life, in our transportation, in our industrial development. Now, it seems like we have to pay what we have caused to the environment and to the atmosphere. Otherwise, there would not be the COP20 or COP21, where every country and every leader in this world has to commit themselves to limit the greenhouse gas emission. And for Thailand, we have pledged to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 20% by the year 2030. Details can be discussed a lot in the next sessions. Let me also reiterate what Marrakesh Action Proclamation for our climate and sustainable development very recently, a week or 2 ago. I've learned that there are 35 decisions. That's quite a lot of decisions including work program under Paris Agreement on enhancing climate technology development and transfer through Green Climate Fund or GCF and through Global Environment Facility or GEF. So what are we going to do as a global citizen with regard to this decision or part of the 35 decisions? There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of decisions being made, but there are too little implementation, I would guess. I slightly involved in this so-called technology needs assessment and technology action plans. And I know that there are Technology Executive Committee or TEC, and I know that there's Climate Technology Center and Network or CTCN, and I know there's National Designated Entity or NDE. A lot of jargons, but we need actions out of these creations. As for Thailand, we have done our homework many years ago with regard to the technology needs assessment, and we have come up with about 4 areas of concern with regard to technology improvement and technology development for most particularly the adaptation part of climate change. And if I remember correctly, the top priority for Thailand would probably be adaptation with regard to our agriculture sector, which is a lifeline of the country, abundant in food and in agricultural products. But once climate change arrives, we may have to act or behave differently, including smart farming, crop improvement, more concise and accurate weather forecast, and actions to accommodate to all kinds of floods and drought that we encounter year in and year out. So these are the platforms that we have been setting ourselves, not only for Thailand, but also in connection to all these global agreements. To make it brief, let me offer you a few observations before I close, because I know a lot of you, apart from the coffee break that you need, you also want to rush to the contents in all the sessions that you have waiting for you. I would like to start off by observing that the whole world has agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them. In Thailand, we are offering a supplementary element to the SDG, as President Sakharin has mentioned briefly, and that is the sufficiency economy philosophy. It is something that His Majesty the King has given to us many decades ago, and we are now alert to the fact that it might be a way out in a sustainable manner. And a way out meaning that the philosophy is based on the 3 pillars or 3 principles that we should think about it and adhere to it if we think is the correct path to our living. And not only for individual living, it's also for the survival of the society in the future, which will encounter a lot of uncertainties. And the 3 pillars consist of reasonableness, moderation, and immunity to shocks. Think about it. Today's hunger, today's poverty, today's disruption in the economy, disruption in the way of life of many countries, Thailand included. We need some guiding principle in order to sustain and living through these uncertainties. And it's not only Thailand, I think it can be used anywhere in the world. And I think that's partly why the United Nations paid a lot of respect to His Majesty the King, as well as trying to learn a few things about his sufficiency economy philosophy. When I look at the 17 items of SDG, let me hypothesize that when I say nexus of the three, we are talking about SDG number 7, SDG number 9, and SDG number 13. This comes nicely with the so-called nexus of energy, climate change, and science and technology. Number 7 is affordable and clean energy. Number 9 is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And number 13 is climate action. So the whole world has agreed already on the nexus of these three things. But the integration, which I would like to focus, of the three is probably more important than each individual element of SDG. Because as we learn from our own context, when we reduce the wall, when we reduce the barrier, when ministries start working together, when public and private sector are working under the so-called Pracharat scheme or public-private partnership for empowerment, we see a lot of changes, as I've told my guests a while ago. We see power of moving things that individual agency cannot or can, but it will take a long time. So I would like to hypothesize that a very important point that we need to start looking is the integration of the three elements or the nexus of the three elements. We know quite well the relationship between energy and climate change. There are a lot of research work in this area, positively, negatively, but we don't know much about the role of technology in connection to the relationship of the energy and climate change issues, especially for developing countries. For developed countries, you may have the edge or the advantage because you have been working a lot and investing a lot in technological development. But for example, photovoltaics. Thailand should be in a very good position because we have a lot of solar radiation throughout the year, but not much of a technology aspect that we do have in our possession. So we are not gaining much. And this should be a reason why university or the gathering and the conference like this start talking about the linkage so that it would be more seamless than the previous years of how to position ourselves, Thailand for example, so that we can be more self-reliant, we can be more sustainable, and we can develop the sufficiency economy from the technology point of view. This is quite difficult because it's something that would relate to a lot of things, and a lot of times we would throw it to the education system, and we would say that we are not prepared, we are not ready because education is not up to the level where technological innovation can happen. But we don't have time, we don't have much time to wait for education to come up with Nobel Prize winner or to come up with a lot of technological breakthroughs or discovery. This is something that public policy has to come in. One may call it market intervention. But market intervention, in my sense, It's not market intervention with regard to the people of the Commerce Department or with the Industry Department alone. It has to involve us in this room also. And us in this room has not been connected to this nexus as much as it should have been. This is my hypothesis, and I hope it's right. And if it is reasonably correct, then the role of researchers, the role of universities, research institutions must change. And change in the direction that your knowledge must come into play a lot more. It must come into play in industrial development. It must come into play in climate change actions. It must come into play so that you will provide a good platform for interlinkages between energy and environment. Much more, not at this level, I would think. So that is my first observation. And when you talk about this nexus, I would also think about the nexus on science, technology, and innovation, that you also have to work in a tripartite manner, not by university alone, not by government alone, but the so-called triple helix, and that is government, universities, and private sector, without which you'll be very lonely. Government alone investing in all this will be very lonely if we don't work with the private sector hand in hand. We'll be very lonely if we don't gain knowledge from universities. And university and industry linkage is crucial. But how to make it work, how to make it productive, I leave it for you to do more. Not to think about it, but to do more. Let me raise a few examples of initiatives underway that the government has been conducting, some of which as recent as a few weeks ago. And these are just some examples directly and indirectly involved with the conferences that you are holding today. First of all, we have been investing in community water management system. And this is a big issue for Thailand because the past year we have encountered big problem in drought. 5 years ago, we encountered a big problem in the so-called century flood, especially in the central plain of Thailand. So theoretically, we are going to encounter this once in a while, hopefully once in a long while. But what to do? This is a lot to do with what we are discussing in real term. How university people, researchers, even private sector would have to come in to help in order to make not only in the area of Ayutthaya where it was heavily flooded 5 years ago, but throughout the country, because this flood problem is all interconnected. If you cannot solve the northern part, you cannot solve the central plain, for example. This would also bring another element into play, and that is for community water management system, PPP is not sufficient. We need PPPP to be able to handle this gigantic issue that we encounter very often. That is public, private, and people partnership. We are talking about tens of thousands of communities that would be affected by all this. And once they are affected, the agriculture product is affected. The revenues and income of farmers are affected. Economic problem rise, social problem follow. It will be like this forever. So I think it's big enough for the Nexus people to come in and take a look seriously of how to provide a good platform. And His Majesty the King, many decades ago, already guided us. For example, through his initiative on the so-called monkey cheek system, which is the small reservoirs to gather or to catch the rain when it comes and to feed the farms when it's gone, or to catch the rain so that the flood would not be as severe as it would have been. So there's a lot of things to be learned, especially from His Majesty's proven principles. And there are a lot to be said here, which I would not have time to do so. In some of the communities that I have visited, they have 4 big problems with regard to water. They have flood problem in some years. They have drought problem in some years. They have wastewater problem that they have to solve in their community. And at times, they have brackish water to be solved as well. 4 water problems in one community. Think about it. This is such a challenge for university people to come and see for themselves and to help the communities to fight these 4 water problems. Early warning system. That's another thing that academicians can come in and help. Maybe through technology, maybe through modeling, maybe through capacity building for the people who has to monitor it themselves, or maybe through the internet and web-based real-time water management system. This is so simple for university, I would guess. Let me also hypothetically suggest what I think is probably feasible. Just 2 weeks ago, we have proposed to the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister the notion of Eastern Economic Corridor of Innovation. Let me just start off by saying the government for many months now have initiated a mega project called Eastern Economic Corridor, building up and extend from the existing Eastern Seaboard that has been the engine of growth of Thailand for the past 20 to 30 years. And by enhancing the Eastern Seaboard to become Eastern Economic Corridor, we are talking about a lot of logistics investment, a lot of airport and seaport upgrades, and a lot of extension of the existing petrochemical and automotive industry in that region, which is the eastern part of Thailand. The government, to be precise, has nominated 3 provinces in the east to run this Eastern Economic Corridor, or EEC, consisting of Chonburi Province, Cha Cheong Sao Province, and Rayong Province. So a few weeks ago, I have submitted a thought and a proposal to the government that in connection to this EEC, the Ministry of Science and Technology would like to supplement and support EEC with the notion of innovation. And by innovation, we are talking about innovation so that to make the existing industries doing better, especially to be able to absorb the disruptive technology that seem to be coming in mass. We also would like to support the notion of EEC in terms of the so-called new S-curves. We need new industries. We need new initiatives in order to stay at least at the same position that we are and do better, hopefully, in the future. For example, in robotics and artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, of aviation industry, something that Many of us in this room may think it's far-fetched, but it's not, because we already have, similar to the automotive industry 30 years ago, today we already have some meaningful aviation components of industries here in Thailand already. Or in terms of digital economy, in terms of biofuels, and in terms of medical hub. But to keep it short, let me say this. If we are talking about EEC of innovation, and in conjunction with this 3-in-1 conference, we may think about that area-based innovation development corridor for precision farming, which has to use or deploy a lot of new technologies. We may entertain the use of robotics and Internet of Things for energy issues such as smart grid, smart city, smart storage, and certainly renewable energy. We may think about EECI on the artificial intelligence for atmospheric modeling, or even for electric vehicles and biofuels, for example. So today we don't have any limitation to our thoughts and initiatives. We should be able to do more in this environment, which is very conducive to integration. And let me finish off by coming back to the significance of integration of these three elements of nexus: energy, climate change, science, technology, and innovation. And even innovation, we can also think about new elements such as startup for new energy, startup for mechanisms to counter climate change, for mitigation, for adaptation. So I would, ladies and gentlemen, encourage you to spend the rest of your conference thinking about, for the Thai participants, instruments, tools, methodologies, and approaches so that we can do better in energy system. We can do better to counter the mitigation and adaptation aspects of climate change, and to be stronger in terms of our technological capabilities. Certainly, we cannot be strong in every aspect, and that's why we need to have collaboration among partners with many countries. And I think for the issue of climate change, international collaboration is probably one of the most significant collaboration that we need to have, because we are living in one world. So I hope it will be a better world, hopefully not before it reaches 2 degrees centigrade. Thank you very much for your attention.